Hello and welcome back to the Sports Beat Podcast. What a week, man. No football, no nothing going on, just some basketball. First things first, we promised Kayleb Brozik would be on. Mr. Brozik, thank you for joining us.
Oh, of course. It's a pleasure.
And also, Tristan can't make it tonight. He might have coronavirus. Just kidding. He doesn't have coronavirus. He's just not feeling very well. But hopefully he gets better real quick. A lot of things to talk about. XFL happening, some basketball, all that jazz. But the first thing we actually want to cover is making sure that you guys subscribe, like, leave us a comment. You guys know the drill. Make sure you guys get all that in so you can let us know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong to get all the latest sports briefing from the Sports Brief Podcast. So with that, let's actually jump right into this thing. This was something the first thing I put on this list, I Googled it. I literally said sports news because I was looking for a final thing to look up, and it was Antonio Brown. What better thing to look up than Antonio Brown than his last things, than this last couple of months? Antonio Brown. He apologized to the Steelers for his distractions, as it was so well put.
Yeah.
Too little or too late? What do you think?
Oh, way too late. Especially with everything else that's happened. I mean, sure, with the whole detail. I mean, and not a big Steelers fan, but coming through, like, you don't need that for a team. And if you're gonna apologize an odd year later, it's too late to apologize. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think at this point, he's got more issues in football and apologizing to teams that I think he should worry about. And I guess that's my thoughts on Antonio Brown.
Yeah. I mean, I just thought, like, at some point, shouldn't we stop hearing about this guy? Like, I mean, no offense, but he should just probably, like, quietly go into the shadows because he's probably not going to get in the NFL anymore. He's wasted many opportunities with teams. Maybe the XFL. I don't know. We'll get into that later. But, I mean, I just felt like we should stop hearing from this guy at some point. Just because, no offense to him, but, I mean, at some point, when you run out of opportunities, you waste opportunities. You just stop hearing it for me. I think I'll still stand by the fact that I do believe he will play somewhere. I don't know where. I think it's going to be a year or two because I mean the dude's probably. Yeah, I mean he's that talented. He's still probably maybe could find a team. I don't know. I think it's one of those things you have to wait it out because for what this man has been up to for the past year. I just think for right now, I think it's going to take some time for teams to calm down and everything because, again, a lot of distractions there as it was so well put. But I think he's got to play somewhere again. I don't think it's going to be too long before we see Antonio Brown. And wouldn't it be crazy if he went back to the Steelers? I think Mike Tomlin – there's no way Mike Tomlin allows that to happen.
I don't think so. I mean, there's too much drama. I mean, if Mike Tomlin does – I mean, he's been a very verbal guy, actually. Thinking back on my interviews with Mike Tomlin where – I don't think he likes to put up with that kind of attitude and actions of a player to where I don't think he ever, like, in his right mind, bring it back in.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at this other thing. We kind of threw this outline together. For me, I really wanted to cover some things, and we can even talk about some Vikings stuff. But I actually want to talk about some NFL players retiring, and Eric Weddle, and I believe Chris Long retired. Growing up sucks. Because you tend to see a lot of your favorite players and whatnot, like just go and like they're never going to be back. Chris Long, Eric Weddle was a guy. It just for me, it's sad to see these guys go, but at the same time, I mean, you can't play until you're 40, and unless you're, I guess, Tom Brady. But I mean, or Brett Favre. But I just think that NFL players are retiring. Okay, Chris Long, Eric Weddle, who are you going to miss more?
Eric Weddle. Me like. Football wise, like I'd like to like big hitters like Eric Weddle. I think about it like the good old days and just watching him light people up. And it was just, I mean, I like to think I modeled my play after him toward enough. Like he was a big guy, big role in like what I wanted to do as a player. And so seeing him go, like I was really upset and kind of like shocked. But at the same, like you said, they get old. Not everybody can do it till they're 40.
Mm-hmm. For me, I think it's a little bit of both obviously both defensive players. Mm-hmm. I'm a defensive line guy. I played D-line in college and everything, so I got to go with Mr. Long here. I think that he's going to be, I really just wanted to see him win a Super Bowl because I think we've seen it, especially as Vikings fans. We've seen it with Everson Griffin. Everson Griffin, i.e. number one, and then we've also seen it with Jared Allen. We've seen Chris Dolman, like just these legendary defensive ends, Jim Marshall, Alan Page, like even the 4 Purple People Eaters who suffered through 3 Super Bowl or 4 Super Bowl losses, whatever it was. I think that, I wanted one of a defensive end. Like my heart pours out to defensive ends that don't win Super Bowls because they get sacks and everything, but they don't get the glory that the quarterbacks do or the running backs, which rightfully so. It's not necessarily as a glory of a thing to happen. So I do think that looking at this, I got to go with Long here, even though it's really not that big of a deal. But you could go either way. That's what I think. But what about this? So. Who would you rather build an offense on, though? I was just thinking this is the next thing we're going into here. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, excuse me.
I think Patrick Mahomes is the guy. Going forward, I think I'd be more interested in putting an offense around. Like, Lamar Jackson is definitely one of the most dynamic players in our league. Yeah. You can't argue that. I mean, MVP year for sure. But I don't think that style of football is ever going to be there in the National Football League. We've seen it in spurts. You've got Michael Vick back in the early 2000s and everything, but it's never fully there. It's got runs, and then I guess teams kind of realize that it's not the way to go. And so I think Patrick Mahomes is kind of the closest thing to putting it both together. Reminds me of kind of like a Steve Young or something back in the day. He still can move when he needs to, but at the same time, he's there to lead a team and play quarterback instead of worrying about running the ball.
Yeah. I feel like Lamar Jackson, I'm going to go against the grain here. I'm going to say it's Lamar Jackson because of the fact, now, don't get me wrong, Patrick Mahomes already has a Super Bowl. He already has an arm. He's got some weapons. But the last time I checked, I would say it's quite easily to say that Lamar Jackson is the better athlete of the two, quite easily. And as far as arm strength and accuracy, I still think you got to go Mahomes. But I think speed is something you can't coach. And this was the first time I would say that Lamar. I mean, this was his first full year as a starter, and this was Patrick Mahomes' second. If it was me, I would be running a lot of different things, not just in terms of play action, in terms of read option. I'd be making some weird stuff up like triple, quadruple reverses. Probably wouldn't work, but I mean, if it's Lamar Jackson at my quarterback, I would try it.
And he gives you the option to be able to try it either way. You're right. Speed cannot be coached, and that's something I think a lot of people take for granted. But at the same, and the offense could be amazing down the stretch, and I'm excited to see what they can do with him. But for me, I got to stick with it because I think you could almost do some of those same things with Patrick. Oh gosh, I got really dark there. Sorry.
I know you're good.
Some of the same things with Patrick Mahomes, and sure, he doesn't have the speed there, but the athleticism, I think, is still higher than most NFL quarterbacks. To where I think he could pull off some of the same plays, maybe not quite as dynamically, but he'd get it done.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so the Vikings. I actually got to bring this question up, and it was a question that I wanted to bring up when we had Tristan on because I think it'd be cool to have 2 Vikings fans against a Packers fan. I don't know, because we've mostly had Packers fans on the show, even though I know it's I
don't know how you let that slide.
I've tried. I've tried to get Vikings fans on here. No, I kid, of course. I actually want to think the biggest offseason move the Vikings have to make. What do you think it is? There's a barrage of ways you could go here.
Looking at it, looking at what everything's going to happen, I think we're going to end up drafting a corner. It's going to be young. I think the biggest free agency move I think I want to see is maybe bringing another name for the offensive line. Sure, it played a lot better this year, but I think there's still there's enough guys out there that they're going to need work. I mean, they're going to want probably more money than we'll end up paying them, and we probably won't do it. But I think we need to another big name on that line would be nice to really protect Kirk, and maybe the numbers were there for him this year to where if we can help him out, Dalvin Cook's numbers were huge. Another name could be the biggest thing to put it all together.
Yeah. I have to say that if the Vikings don't, I know the cap is a myth now, especially with the Vikings and then what they've done with Anthony Barr, Danielle Hunter, they pretty much retained their entire defense. And that has been killing it, by the way. I think in order for the Vikings to really take a step forward from, getting beaten down by the 49ers in the divisional round, we can't call a spade a spade. We have to call a spade there. In order for the Vikings to build off that, it needs to start with the salary cap situation. Riley Reef, I don't know what needs to happen there, but I think if not mess with the salary cap, at least bring in competition so that way you can cut them outright. Also, offensively, there's not really a lot of contracts that I really don't support other than Kirk Cousins because, I mean, $24 million. I say if you give Kirk Cousins $14 million, that's $10 million you can have to find another quality offensive lineman.
Yep.
And there's a lot of the Vikings even had Drew Samia, who not a lot of people knew. I watched him a little bit when he was at Oklahoma. I watched his highlights. Dude's mean. Like, dude tries to hurt people. So with the struggles of Pat Elflein and the Vikings offensive line, personally, I think they've got the fix in-house at left guard. I think it could be Drew Samia, even though Pat Elflein, he actually got better as the season wore on. Now, mind you, it wasn't like astronomically better, but that's a position switch that, I mean, anybody like going from college center to coming to be an NFL center and then going back to play guard, like that's a tough thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anybody takes that into consideration. Like if I'm playing tight end and we'll not even say tight, we'll say running back, and you gain a little bit of weight and you go to fullback in the NFL, and basically you have to lose all that weight or you have to go back to running back, even if you stay at the same weight. I realized running back and fullback aren't necessarily, different. I mean, other than fullbacks are blocking more. But the thing is that the concept doesn't change. It's still a position switch, a lot of different things coming at you. And there's a lot of different things between a center and a guard, obviously. So I don't think people gave this man, enough credit because, again, I know the beginning of the year looked awful. I did not I wasn't happy with how it went down. There was I think through the first 4 or 5 games, I think I saw him got thrown around like a rag doll more times than I could count. So I'm thinking that the first thing they got to do is they got to they have to find a way, salary cap situation. Who's the biggest like free agent re-signing that the Vikings need to bring back though?
I guess I got to think about our contracts that we got coming up. I don't know where I'd want to go to. For sure, biggest signing back.
I say it's Anthony Harris. Here's the thing though about Anthony Harris. A lot of people don't take this into consideration. He was undrafted, completely. I think he was either out of Virginia or Virginia Tech, and the fact that guy did as much as he did, I still think that Anthony Harris is he's a must resign. He led the NFL in interceptions last year. Obviously the Vikings had Harrison Smith. Anthony Harris, and from top to bottom, I think is a must resign, especially because Harrison Smith, when he's down in the box, the boy makes plays now. And, I mean, I would say he's probably, if not one of the best safeties, one of the best safeties currently in the NFL. Because, I mean, everything he does in the box, deep coverage-wise, he is how hard he hits people. He ends them. Literally, he deserves to be. I think when it's all said and done, I hope he gets a Super Bowl. Maybe not with if he doesn't get it with the Vikings, hopefully somewhere else, because the man absolutely deserves it. I personally think that with everything that's going to happen with the Vikings, I think that they're going to find a way to retain Harris, which I full-heartedly agree with. I also think that if the Vikings do bring back Anthony Barr, they need to do it on because as many times. Cheaper. Yeah, it's got to be cheaper, especially for what I saw him get his beat as often as he did out of the backfield. Now I know covering running backs in the NFL is hard. That's got to be one of the hardest jobs that you could do in the NFL, other than playing corner or quarterback. Tough job. But that's what he brought you in to do it. That's what you've been doing for the past 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, it's it really realized early year, you see him getting beat by those running backs up the seams, and I was like, man, that's a play he used to make, and now if he's gonna keep playing here, it's got to be. That was the one when I knew it had to be cheaper. I will say the Vikings re-signed Eric Kendricks a while ago, and I still think he's got a year or two left on his contract. I'm excited to see what he does for the next couple years because I do believe that he is, if not, he's emerging as one of the best middle linebackers in the entire game. Now, interceptions, I don't think he had one during the regular season, but he had the most pass. The most pass deflections since ever. I think out of any linebacker that's pretty much ever done it. And this guy everywhere in coverage does great against the run. The Vikings though, as far as I think there's a lot of different things that the Vikings can do. We need to do another episode because I think that honestly there's a lot of different things that the Vikings can do in order to bring in a lot of different stuff because from top to bottom, I think with everything that went on with the defensive line, especially against the 49ers. Yeah, those two inside guys. I know Linval is a Pro Bowler, but opposite him,
Sheldon Richardson was a bigger loss than people think.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what their plan is, but I still think they need to be able to bring somebody in opposite him. But we'll talk about Vikings another day. We got to go to Tom Brady possibly going to the Raiders. Now, I want to start out by saying that if he does, that will absolutely be one of the craziest things, like craziest turn of events.
I can't even fathom it. Like really, like thinking about Tom Brady anywhere besides New England is just absolutely insane. I mean, he's been their guy for over a decade and a half now.
Yeah.
Had 6 Super Bowl rings. Like thinking of him playing anywhere else but in a Patriots jersey is not there.
I know. And the Raiders have all Derek Carr hasn't been as bad. The Raiders, they can complain, but they haven't had to deal with guys like, Christian Ponder or Tavares Jackson as their starting quarterbacks. Like, legit, you cannot complain unless you have had the Vikings luck at quarterbacks. At least the Raiders have won a Super Bowl, and they've had some good quarterbacks. They've had some franchise quarterbacks, and that they've drafted. Derek Carr's a franchise quarterback. I don't care what anybody says.
I agree. And I don't know. That's part of the issue, I think, of bringing in Tom. Even thinking about Tom Brady going to Oakland, it's because Derek Carr, sure, he's had a couple of rough years, but it's not like he's ever been terrible. He's not one of those guys that's ever been at the bottom of the league, kind of. And you're going to bring in an old veteran to try to replace him instead of, I think, surround him with something else, and I think they win.
Yeah, and here's another thing though, that if the Raiders had Antonio Brown, I think this would have played out very differently because number one, if Antonio Brown would have played, I believe that Derek Carr would have been able to just tear people apart, including the Vikings, because especially with what he would have done, Brown would have done against the Vikings early in the season. But I still think that we would be talking very differently had Antonio Brown not, did what he did with the Raiders and subsequently the Patriots. I think it's comes down to, and there's not really a lot of weapons. What was it? The only tight end that they had down in Oakland was a guy that was basically not heard of. Mm-hmm. And other than that, other than their running back, I'm blanking his name right now, but
Josh Jacobs. No.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I look at it. Okay, they were 7-9 last year after being they only won 3 or 4 games a year before that. Yeah. 7-9 this year. Derek Carr, 21 touchdowns, 8 picks. But Josh Jacobs, 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns. Okay, 1 offensive weapon. Darren Waller, their tight end I was just talking about. 90 catches, 1,100 yards. But before that, nobody knew who this guy was.
Yeah.
And then you got Hunter Giffro, that was a guy. Big shout out to Hunter Renfro. Excuse me. I used to play with a guy named Hunter Giffro out of PC, but quick shout out. But Hunter Renfro, I believe he had more tied with the same amount of touchdowns as Odell did. So as a rookie out of Clemson, that's pretty crazy. And Tyrell Williams, I know a lot of. I even brought him on the. I talked about him on the podcast a while ago when Tristan was on. I still think Tyrell Williams is a guy that not a lot of people heard of. They didn't really know a lot about. And when he came to the Raiders, he actually made a lot of plays and did some good things for him. Now, a big jump from when Gruden and everybody stepped in there. So I'm excited for the Raiders. I still think that there's a lot of things they can do there, but I don't think Tom Brady is the answer.
No, not at all.
No, I think they've got add some receivers. Other than Renfro, they had and Williams. Keep in mind, they didn't have a receiver over 40 catches. So, and when you have Derek Carr, who can he can hook it now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell me that if you didn't have Antonio Brown, if you have Antonio Brown for the Raiders, they go at least 10-6.
Agreed.
At 10-6, because Antonio Brown is that much of a talent that they get 3 games back with him. And I think people, it's the Raiders, so I think a lot of people didn't know what was going to happen, especially when they drafted, who was that, Cleveland Farrell guy out of Clemson, really early, nobody was expecting that. I was expecting him to try to take Bosa or somebody or try to figure out, what they could do there. But if you look at this, the Raiders were surprisingly competitive in a lot of games. They just barely lost to Houston. And, they got blown out by the Jets, but, that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
And then they were 1 game away from being 500, and that was against the Broncos. They lost by 1 point. So, I mean, I think the Raiders are not that far off. They're going to have to do some things differently. Okay, you said the Vikings are going to draft a quarterback.
At some point, I feel like we always do, and I really don't want it to be our first round because I feel like that's what we always end up doing. But
I know.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's not a terrible class for corner at all. So I wouldn't be surprised if we could snag like a top talent and still second round sitting at like pick 50.
I swear, if the Vikings, I would actually agree. Like that was my surprise pick for the Vikings is they do pick up a quarterback. I don't think they do in the first round because I think now, even if you do draft a quarterback, you still have Kirk Cousins, who's probably going to be the starter this year for at least one more year, barring non-injury, of course. So, and that's another thing that I don't think a lot of people thought about. If Kirk Cousins, God willing, does not get if he gets injured, I don't want him to get injured. I feel like that would be awful because now their Vikings are out $28 million out a good quarterback. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. I'm tired of people, bashing him. He is a good quarterback. Needs a little bit of help on the offensive line. And at the end of the day, the Vikings got away from their offensive scheme against the 49ers. That's why it was a 2-score game. And they weren't able to run the football because Delvin Cook was hurt and Alexander Mattison wasn't much better. He was injured too. So looking at this, I hope, barring anything catastrophic, I don't think the Vikings are going to draft anything first round, but I expect second round down, they might bring in a surprise quarterback. And I don't know that it will necessarily be a guy that they think can push Cousins, if you will, but I do think that it will be a surprise pick at quarterback because after Cousins, after this next year, it's wide open. We don't know what could happen. And I think that it's something that's interesting and it's something you have to look at because I don't know if that's another big question. Will Kirk Cousins get another big contract? I don't know. I think it's a good question because this year he played better than he did last year because I think honestly he had better offensive line play. The scheme was better fit to him. They ran play action way better. And I think overall he played much better than his first year in Minnesota. So I'm excited to see what happens. But I don't think it goes in the first round. The Vikings have way too many needs. They need a left guard, again, who I think Drew Samia can come in. Josh Klein, I thought, okay, I have to kind of call myself out here. At the beginning of the season, I said that the starting right guard Josh Klein should be replaced by Drew Samia. I got to say, I was wrong here because Josh Klein played very respectably. Yeah. He played very well and when he was in there and not injured, unfortunately. And I think that he did a very good job stepping at a right guard because a lot of people – he was coming from Tennessee, and I was like, okay, if Tennessee lets go of an offensive lineman, there's got to be something wrong. And I watched him. He got overpowered at times. Leverage was a little questionable. And, he was undrafted, so you figure, okay, this guy's probably on his last wheel or whatever. He played very respectably for the Vikings, so I can't bash the guy. And this guy in Drew Samia, he is a mauler. I think people don't realize what this guy did to people in college. He hurt them. So I'm excited to see, what those offensive line, that second string offensive lineman can do. And did you watch the last regular season game against Chicago?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I would say for 3/4 of that game, that second offensive line played. And of course, there's going to be some mistakes and everything. It's the second unit. They haven't played all season long. They almost beat Chicago while not even having basically any of their starters in. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, okay, if our offensive line can let our running backs, I think it was, I'm trying to remember who that third string running back was for the Vikings. Yeah, Mike Boone, thank you. Mike Boone run for over 150, almost 150 yards. Dude, if he runs for them against the Bears with our second offensive line, I'm pretty pumped.
Well, agreed. Then with a second unit offensive line playing the way they did, it was crazy. Especially, the best part, I think. Sorry, little off topic, but my favorite part of that whole game is the fact that how much hate we got after we lost that. Yeah, everybody's saying nobody wanted to actually talk about how we had our second unit in playing that game and still almost beat the Bears.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. And I think that even defensively too, we had our second. Most of our second guys in, and Daniil Hunter was a guy that suffered from it because I think he needed half a sack to get a $600,000 raise. I would have been a little mad. I would have tried to play.
Give me a play, give me two. I'll get a half a sack before. Yeah, you've done it all year.
Yeah, I know. I was like, okay, this is not give him a drive. He would have gotten a sack and a drive. Seriously, I was a little mad I would have been mad if I was him. But this business also isn't about money, I guess, unless you're Kirk Cousins, who this next year has a lot of money coming his way. I do want the Vikings to draft a quarterback, but a first round, I think corner is a big what if.
I think corner will. I mean, it's got to be our first round target. I would think.
Yeah.
Like with the uncertainty of Xavier Rhodes' play this whole last year. I mean,
that's like 3 years. Like what the?
Well, true. And this year was the icing on the cake for me, to where I was like, you know what? Oh, okay, let's figure something out here with you, bud.
Yeah, I know.
You want to talk about? Oh, sorry, I'll catch you off again. But talk about the most most surprising Pro Bowl pick replacement there.
Oh my God, I was like, that at that point, for me, that solidified the fact that the Pro Bowl is a joke.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, first of all, Kirk Cousins didn't make it over Aaron Rodgers. Now, I'm not saying that Kirk Cousins is in any way better than Aaron Rodgers. That is not, obviously, that would be blasphemous. I should not have a podcast if I ever actually said that in a sentence and actually meant it. Kirk Cousins is very clearly not the better quarterback. But Kirk Cousins did have a better statistical season, and just about and I think people forget. I don't think the Packers played their last game. I think they did. If Kirk Cousins plays that last game, I severely think he has I think that he really starts to boost those numbers too. And for me, I do believe that Kirk Cousins does show some good things when he has to, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. And I'm never going to compare him that. I'm never going to say him, but he did deserve to be, this year at least, he deserved to be in the Pro Bowl above Aaron Rodgers because of what he did this year, especially after week 3. What was it, 4? When everybody was hating him, and then he started to come out like October Player of the Month or whatever.
Yep.
And just absolutely started to ball out and got Dalvin Cook going, even though when he got hurt, it was put on Kirk. But, okay, the Vikings won't draft a quarterback in the first round. They got to figure out and I was a guy that thought Mike Zimmer was crazy for drafting all these corners in the first round and second round. I'm like, dude, we don't need 12 corners. Like, what are you talking about? Mr. Zimmer, if you ever listen, I was wrong. You are 100% right. You do need a lot of corners, especially in this league where especially when you face Aaron Rodgers twice a year. And Matt Stafford, who is a very respectable quarterback. Not a lot of people give him any respect either.
Underrated quarterback, yes.
And then also, I mean, when the Vikings, even though Moore that they went to play in Kansas City, absolutely shredded the Vikings like all season long. As a Vikings fan, though, didn't it seem like the entire season, like it was like just unlucky streak after unlucky streak? Like every time an opposing quarterback would throw a pass, that would go long. I just felt like, okay, something's off about this play. Like it's gonna be bad luck. Somehow they're gonna catch it, and it's gonna be like over Xavier Rhodes or Trey Waynes. Like I felt so bad for him. Like it was tough watching it.
I mean, Trey Waynes, the kid, he's impressed me. I mean, sure, not the greatest year, but at the same time, I think going forward, he's our CB1. Like, yeah, and I like him. Hughes in the slot, I thought played well. Mm-hmm. But I think those are some guys that we're still going to have to obviously put some other guys around. You can't play corner with just 2 in this league anymore. Too many wide receiver threats. And you want to talk unlucky. I mean, 2 backup quarterbacks we face, both of them beat us. That's really when I was like, this is going to be how the year goes.
And for me, I'm actually optimistic. I was happy that it ended in the divisional round the way it did. Like I was like, okay, it hurts, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, this was coming. Like there was no way that we could deny it. I do feel though that if we need to see if Dalvin Cook can stay healthy for a full year, like for real.
Still has not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think the first year was only 4 games. Not his problem. Torn ACL was awful. I mean, obviously a very tough injury to come back from. Then the year after that, he had some hamstring. I think some growing too. And when he was healthy, you were like, okay, if this guy stays healthy for 14 to 15 games, he's going to run for over 1,000 yards. This year he does. I think he stayed. Yeah, he stayed healthy for like 13 games this year, and ran for over 1,200 yards, and like he was very effective until we got to the playoffs. Obviously, that crazy Kirk Cousins pass to Kyle Rudolph to win it was nuts. So, I don't know. I think it was. Like, I have to give the Saints. I feel bad for the Saints though. Like that's to have your season end like that, like in consecutive years, and then they literally changed the pass like interference rule completely around for you, and then you get screwed on it by again. Yeah, I feel for Saints fans a little bit. Like I get why Michael Thomas was a little salty. Like I think we can give the man that. Like he should have been salty, but still, at some point, they had multiple. If they didn't miss that field goal, like we go on and on about the things that the Saints could have done to win that game. But I just think that I think it was OPI. But again, it's one of the things we have to come back to. Let's see. Most exciting player of the Vikings from the Vikings that you're excited to see next year. Maybe like a guy that's gonna have a bigger role.
Actually, I'd say Olabisi Johnson was probably my pick there.
Really?
I think you put him in the slot with Thielen fully healthy, Diggs out there. I mean, slot, if he goes wide and you put Thielen like in the slot, I mean, either way, I think he's gonna you'll see a number increase from him to where I think he's the player to really keep an eye on for next year or even coming back. Chad Beebe.
Yeah. Chad Beebe, I was surprised. I had him preseason pick. I said he was a guy that was going to come out and catch 40 passes for the Vikings. I said, okay, because they obviously Thielen, Diggs, number 1, number 2, locked out. Yep. Don't need to worry about it. Okay. So after that, it was Laquan Treadwell, Olabisi Johnson, and Chad Beebe. Chad Beebe was obviously over Laquan Treadwell at this point. I think the water boy is almost over Laquan Treadwell. But I think that he still made some plays this year. Laquan Treadwell.
There was no drops. That was the nice thing to see.
I know. For a guy that was a former first-round pick, I was like, okay, I know that this ship has probably sailed in Minnesota, and rightfully so. He even admitted it. But I do have to say, he did. There was a lot of times he really turned it around. I actually hope they bring him back on a 1-year deal, $500,000 minimum. Just so maybe we'll see what he can do. Maybe he can make a living out of this wide receiver 3, play. I don't know, because I still think there's some good stuff there. He's big. He can run a little bit. He can catch some passes. So I don't know. I still think I like your Olabisi Johnson pick, but I'm going to do you one better. Okay. I'm going to say Irv Smith Jr. is going to come out next year. I'm predicting it right here. He catches at least 50 passes and at least 5 touchdowns.
50 passes, 5 touchdowns. Yeah, because I can't argue that.
Because I think what the Vikings are going to do, they're going to bring in an offensive lineman, whether that's free agency, the draft, trade, whatever. And they're going to force Olabisi Johnson, or they should force to try get the ball in his hands in open field, because this kid can run. Holy cow. You blink and he's across the 50. This dude he's got speed. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Kyle Rudolph has had his moments in Minnesota, but he's not that fast. Isn't it painful to watch him run a little bit? You're all right, big guy, let's go.
That's best. I mean, best time to throw it to him is in the red zone when you don't have to worry about what he's got to do after he catches the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, especially offensively, the Vikings, I think they're going to see a little bit of a decline from Rudolph, because I think that they're just going to go more towards Irv Smith Jr. So that's why I picked him to be able to come out next year. And I still think that Irv Smith Jr. is going to be one. But then also on the defensive side of the ball, I'll let you go to your defensive side in a little bit. I think that Jaleel Johnson. Now, he was a guy. I watch a lot of tape. I'm a nerd. I have a lot of spare time. And I watched tape on him, and there was a lot of times he gets overpowered. He's in the wrong gap. He has the wrong leverage. And if the Vikings don't bring somebody else in, and they think that Jaleel Johnson can keep that spot, because there were times when he played very well. In the run game, in the pass game, Dallas, he had played very well against Dallas. And in a game we had to have. And I still think that next year he's going to come out. He's going to get a lot more opportunities, because he showed he could play in a lot of situations. I think he had 3 sacks this year, and the starting D tackle, Shamar Seven had 1. I think he's going to get more of a chance, and I think he's going to make good on it, because I got to love the former boy from Iowa. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
So defensively, who's your pick? Who's going to come out next year?
I think I mentioned him earlier, and I think it's going to be Mike Hughes sitting there corner. I think we saw some spurts throughout the year where definitely played well. And I think when it comes down to the time, crunch time, when he's going to be our 1 or 2 next year, he's going to surprise some people. I mean, the size isn't really the biggest, obviously, not the biggest kid to play. But I think if you keep him maybe inside that slot position, jamming up some wide receivers, he's going to do a good work.
Yeah, and I think when I absolutely love Mike Zimmer. I don't mean to sound weird, but Mike Zimmer, if you ever need a place to stay in South Dakota, you can come down to Winter, man. You can stay with me. I'm pretty sure you can stay with you or your parents or whatever.
Of course.
Yeah, because I mean, I love Mike Zimmer. Number one, because he's a fixer. I think, especially these last couple of years, the offensive line has been like a major catastrophe for the Vikings offense, like for a long time, ever since he's been there. So, but now I like the fact that him and general manager Rick Spielman are both really trying to like make something out of it. Like they've drafted 3 offensive linemen in the past 3 drafts in the first couple of rounds, like Pat Elflein, Brian O'Neill, and then the new kid.
Garrett
Bradbury. Yeah, Garrett Bradbury out of North Carolina State. Like, I'm glad that the Vikings are spending early round picks. Like, we don't need to do like 3 years in a row like the Cowboys. Like, we don't need 3 first round draft picks to be like for the Vikings offensive line, like going towards the O line. I think that Brian O'Neill is a very underrated right tackle, and he was playing with a bad elbow too, and I don't think people really took that into thought. Like playing like when you can't bend your elbow past this and as an offensive tackle. That's a tough spot to be in. Like I don't know what people, because especially the pass rushers, how active they have their hands. Like that's tough. Like to not be able to bend your elbow past half. But no, I think offensively, as far as the O line goes, left tackle, I don't hate on Riley Reef. I'm actually a fan of what he's done now. Yes, has he allowed a couple more sacks? Yes, but Matt Khalil, do I need to say more?
Yeah. No, not at all. Those were the bad days. Oh man.
Yeah, I hate to open that wound again, but it's like it's the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
And I think, what about okay? I'll say this and I'll let you finish. I'm sorry.
No.
I think first round left tackle might be what the Vikes do, because corners. I think Zimmer's proven he can find corners pretty much anywhere and develop them. So I mean, because he's the cornerback guru, but I think first round offensive tackle, obviously left tackle, because Brian O'Neill's got right tackle spotted down. But okay, what were you gonna say?
I guess I don't know. Brain's gone, train of thoughts out the window. So
no, you're good. Let's see here. Can you give me if the Vikings had to go for Joe Burrow, like if they had a legitimate shot to go for Joe Burrow, and they would trade Kirk Cousins to the Bengals, and they would have to trade 2 first-round draft picks, would you pull that trigger? I don't know if I would.
I don't.
Really? You're not for a guy like Joe Burrow?
I'm not. I don't think the play is going to be there at the next level to where you won't see that same numbers that he had this last year at LSU. Yeah. I think I hate to say it, but it kind of reminds me of like some of the earlier like 2000 quarterbacks, or like even like an Eric Crouch. I don't remember.
Couch, yeah.
But I don't think that he's going to have that transition, and he's going to be one of the Heisman busts that everybody hates to see, and happens more often than not. Yeah.
That's kind of catching me off. Everybody loves this kid. Him and Trevor Lawrence. Everybody's like, ugh, like over those 2 quarterbacks.
Trevor Lawrence is a guy next year. I'm excited to see where he goes, because I think he will tear it up the next level. But I don't feel comfortable with saying Joe Burrow's will. Like just something's off with. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Something's not right. But I don't see it transitioning well for him.
But also, we have to put in the fact that we don't have football for a long time.
Oh,
This show is going to be mainly basketball, like earlier predictions for next year, and some that's basically what it's going to be, is basically basketball, because no football for a long time. We've also got March coming up. It's a month away. What am I saying? We've got March Madness that will obviously happen a little ways down the line here. But as far as the Vikings, I'm glad I got another Vikings fan, because I can actually express some of the thoughts I have. Dalvin Cook, will he be back? Like, obviously he's going to be back, but will he get a contract extension?
Yeah. You have
Dalvin Cook. When he can't stay healthy for a full season.
The numbers when he is there, though, I think they're too good to. I mean, I would hate to be like if I'm either Zimmer or Spielman, if I see him have to leave and watch him go somewhere else and tear it up for, maybe an NFL chasing down Emmitt Smith, 2,000 yards. I would hate to see it to where, and I think the talent's there that he could, to where you have to give him that extension.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think honestly the reason he's probably getting hit so much is because it was a lot like Adrian Peterson, this zone scheme is you sometimes you get hit in the backfield, and that's tough. You have to, as a running back, the thing that makes Dalvin Cook so amazing is when he gets ahead of steam, you either A, aren't going to catch him, or you're going to pay for doing so. And when he's caught in the backfield, it's just tough because, the entire I can't name how many runs the Vikings had for that looked like it should have been for negative yardage, but since Dalvin Cook is so elusive and fast and strong, like you just couldn't bring him down. So he turned like a negative 2-yard run into like a 5-yard run, and I think that's what the zone running scheme is meant to do. But at the same time, if he was to go, I don't think. Don't get me wrong, Alexander Mattison is a dude now. Like he played very well when he had to. Like when they gave him the ball, they absolutely balled out. He did. So I think he's gonna stick around and do some good things for the Vikings. Maybe one of the best running back duos of all time. Like as far as Vikings fans, other than Chester Taylor and Adrian Peterson, those two were legit. By the way, like nobody remembers Chester Taylor either.
Of course, third down. I mean, as soon as I love watching him hit the field.
And he was a better pass catching back though than AP though. Yeah. Like AP. Okay, another topic for discussion. AP. This man, I think he's only got one more year left on his contract with the Washington Redskins. You think he's got one more 1,000-yard season left in him?
No. I mean, yeah,
he's old.
But, yeah, I mean, the age is. He's a dude that I want to see. I want to see him like catch maybe a couple spots on the all-time rushing list and everything. But I think the age is there to where I'm fine with him taking kind of a victory lap and playing a couple more years. And I'm excited for when he comes back for the day to sign and retire as a Viking.
Yeah.
But I don't know if 1,000 yards is realistic for him next year.
I still feel like, when he played for Washington and he came to Minnesota, like the way he was still running was phenomenal. Like Harrison Smith was afraid to tackle him. And Harrison Smith's a scary dude now. Like if you see like Harrison Smith, he's one of those quiet guys. You hear the stereotype about you don't like mess with quiet guys. He's that guy.
Yeah.
And I think, looking at him and seeing that he was a little afraid to tackle Adrian Peterson, I agree. Like I get it because that's a big. Now he's big, but he's fast, elusive, but he makes you pay too. So I saw some good things out of AP here. I'm gonna go against the grain here. I see he has 2 more 1,000-yard seasons. I say one more with the Redskins, and then one more, if not next year, the year after that. But then I think he's done.
Yeah.
Because, go ahead.
I mean, the only thing like with the Redskins now, with their rookie, Mr. First name
Haskins,
I don't remember, but Guy. What's that?
Oh, Guys, yeah, Darius Guys. I'm sorry.
I mean, I think he's going to be a legit back, and I think with the split time that AP is going to have, I don't think he's going to have enough carries to actually use them well enough to hit 1,000. I mean, I think next year he's going to be maybe an 850, 925 guy.
Yeah,
he could be close, but I don't think it'll be quite to 1,000.
Yeah, I still think he's got enough talent still. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, this dude's 34, 35, 36. He's old for a running back, and he's still got that explosiveness. He's still got that strength. For me, it's impressive because I'm watching this guy. He was the reason I really started watching the Vikings. AP was, I think it was 2007. I'll never forget it. I turned on the TV to watch the Vikings play the Atlanta Falcons, and this dude got a 60-yard out pass from Tavares Jackson. Or it was literally a 0-yard pass. And he turned it into a 60-yard touchdown. And I was like, okay. From that moment on, I watched Adrian Peterson and everything he did. And obviously, he's a future Hall of Famer. I want him to get closer to Emmitt Smith because he's at over 14,000 yards. I want him to beat him. I want him to beat Emmitt Smith because I think he can. I think he's probably. I might get a little flack for saying this. I think he's more talented than Emmitt Smith. Like when we're talking about if Adrian Peterson had Emmitt Smith's offensive line for half of his career, the 2,000-yard season would have been nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about when he real big throwback, and it's a wound for me. But watching him, what was it, 2012, the year after the ACL and everything, coming back and hitting that 2,000 and being 6 yards short of Emmett, that hurt to see.
Eric Dickerson, but yeah, and it was.
Wow.
But I also think he did it with that offensive line. It had Brandon Fusco too. Nobody. He did it with a below average offensive line.
Yep.
That's the thing that impressed me about it more. So I think before we wrap up the show tonight, we got some of the bonus material. Tristan couldn't make it. We were actually gonna give him some crap because he's never been to Disneyland or Disney World. I don't know how you don't you said it best. How do you not go to the happiest place in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't talk. I hit it at 18. My childhood, I guess, wasn't that great, but my parents made sure I went. So
you went. That's all that matters. And I went when I was like really young, so I don't remember. I remember some of it. We'll get to something that I remember because we're gonna say our favorite memory about Disneyland and Disney World. For me, it was I only have one, even though it really wasn't like a favorite memory. It's more traumatizing than favorite, really. I'm assuming you watched Jaws, right?
Yep.
Okay, I watched Jaws. I actually liked the show. Like I liked the sharks. I don't know why. I was like, I literally was like 6 or 7 when I started watching Jaws. And usually, kids that young probably don't like watching, things that come in the water and try to eat. Like that didn't comprehend with me. And I was on the Jaws ride. I can't remember Disneyland or Disney World. I don't remember. It's either one. And the shark came up my side of the boat and bit the electrical cord, and scared the crap out of me. Like from that moment, I'm imagining that moment right now. Like I'm closing my eyes. I can imagine that moment right now because it was so traumatizing. Like a shark came up my side. Now, keep in mind, fake shark. But I didn't know. Like for all I knew, it was a real shark coming to get me.
Oh, especially as a young kid. Oh yeah.
Oh, and then so that was my most the most memorable time. I also got my face painted like a Dalmatian. I mean, okay, if none of you have ever been or excuse me, haven't been to either Disneyland or Disney World, go to either one, go to both. Okay? Like please. Okay, favorite memory for you, Disney World, and then we'll call it a wrap.
Ooh, gosh, I thought about it all week, and I think it's got to be. I want to say it's Animal. We were in Animal Kingdom, and we were on like the Mount Everest ride, I believe. I don't remember the name. And me and my little sister got lucky enough to sit up front, and of course, this is like their new like fancy roller coaster where eventually you hit the end of the tracks, and then it spins you backwards, right? And so we get to the end, and apparently my sister had never like seen or heard about it, and I knew what I was getting into. And so we hit the top, and she's like, what's going on? And you hear it click, and we drop backwards. And I literally watched my little sister cry in the front of this roller coaster. We're going backwards down through the rest of the roller coaster. And afterwards, she gets off, and I want to say she didn't pee her pants, but she had cried enough to where it looked like she had peed her pants from all the water running down her face. To where
Holy God.
The rest, I mean, traumatizing for her, I guess it kind of matches yours, but for me, it was just watching her experience. That was probably the best thing I've ever experienced in my life.
I'm not a big roller coaster guy, but if that would have happened to me, I don't think I would have had like a much different reaction. Like I like roller coasters, but if that would have happened, if I don't know what's going to happen, I probably would have a similar, if not the same reaction. But then again, in my defense though, okay, I think I did cry about the shark, but I was like 6. Okay.
Oh, she doesn't get that same like little courtesy, like, okay, I understand you were young. No, yeah. My sister was 12 at the time, so I mean, definitely deserves a little flack. And I'm glad she's not a big sports fan. She's missing out and watching the podcast, but I'm not too worried about her finding out that I told the story.
Okay, we'll be sure to promote that a little bit so it gets back to her. No, I'm just kidding, but no, I really do appreciate you coming on because I need Vikings fans. The rest of you, please. Vikings fans, you guys want to come on, let me know. Just email us at thesportsbp@yahoo.com because we need Vikings fans. We need lovers, man. We need people that have been heartbroken a time or two because of the purple. And I'd assume we've done that. Before we wrap it up, we've had that. Before we wrap it up, though, please, everybody make sure to also watch us on YouTube for those that listen on SoundCloud and Spotify and everything. You guys can watch me, chuck my microphone across the room when the Vikings lose. Watch funny reactions, whatever. Make sure to watch us on YouTube. Also, remember to subscribe. Kayleb, man, you know what it is. We appreciate you coming on. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We'll have to do it again.
Absolutely. Fun. Oh, yeah. With that, we're going to hit the road. But everybody, make sure you have a good night. And as always, peace out. Thank you for watching the Sports Brief Podcast. If you would like to see our newest videos, keep in touch with the latest sports issues, or check in on your favorite team, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud, and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.